Drive-by shootings are something we normally associate with Hollywood action movies, but they've become a reality on the streets of Sydney. Last night, a bullet fired from a passing car narrowly missed a 2-month-old baby who was asleep in her cot. And on Monday night, 2 houses were sprayed with bullets in separate attacks. Although there have been no deaths, police fear it could only be a matter of time before an innocent bystander is caught in the firing line. Today, the New South Wales Police launched Operation Spartan, aimed at cracking down on gun-related violence. Earlier, I spoke to Acting Police Commissioner Nick Kaldas. Commissioner, this does seem like something out of the Wild West, almost daily drive-by shootings in Sydney. What's going on?
There has been a bit of a spike in drive-by and related sort of shootings. But by the same token, overall, if you look at it over the last 2 or 3 years, it has not escalated dramatically, but you do get spikes, and this is clearly one of them. And in return, we're obviously ramping up our efforts to try and tackle the problem, arrest those who are responsible, seize the weapons and protect the public.
Why do you think there has been a spike?
It could be any number of reasons, but usually what we have found is that it is conflict between one criminal group and another. But you do get occasions where it's a domestic issue and people decide to try and resolve it this way, which is obviously the wrong way to go. It's not a good thing to do.
Now, what is usually the intent here? Do they actually mean to kill someone?
It's almost impossible to try and definitively answer that question, what their intention is. But what we can say is certainly in the last spate, there hasn't been anybody hurt, and it's certainly not hurt badly. And we're happy about that. Nobody died or was hurt badly. But what we'd like to see, obviously, is for it to stop altogether. And our whole efforts, certainly over the next few weeks, will be entirely based on intelligence, on what we know, to try and be in the right place at the right time and to try and counter what's been happening so that it stops. Our aim is to stop these drive-by shootings.
Now, you've actually described to me that this is a cowardly crime.
I think the only way to describe people who may have a conflict with another individual and instead of dealing with it, turn up at night, in the dead of night in the dark, and shoot up his house or her house with innocent wives and husbands and kids in the place, can only be described as cowardice. It's a coward's way of dealing with conflict. It's unacceptable.
Now, who's behind it? Who are these people?
There isn't one individual or one group of individuals involved. We think it's become a little bit of a modus operandi.
But you're talking about criminal gangs, you've talked about a turf war. You must know who some of the players are.
There are indications that some of the groups involved have connections to outlaw motorcycle gangs and perhaps Middle East organised crime gangs, and a mixture of both.
Is there a bit of history there with motorcycle gangs and now their connection with Middle Eastern criminals? Is that something recent?
It's relatively recent, but it's certainly a line that's blurring. There are a lot of groups who have been connected to Middle East organised crime and are part of that ilk and that milieu, and they've moved into the bikie sphere. It's simply one criminal group melting into another, I guess.
So how powerful is that combination?
It's something that's worrying. They bring with them perhaps connectivity to other groups that we don't encourage and we wouldn't like to see happen, but there's nothing we can do about that. Criminals work together, particularly where there's a profit to be made, and that's the ultimate aim with most criminal enterprises. It's about making money. What
about their attitude to society and to police? There seems to be a contempt there.
Yeah, there is a definite contempt and disdain, if you like, for authority and law enforcement, but more importantly, it's a disdain for the community. These shooting up exercises in suburban streets clearly demonstrate a disdain for society, for the community in which they live, for people that are probably related to them. They may end up getting hurt one day because they've begun this sort of cycle of shootings and retaliations and so on.
You've had enormous problems getting extra information because people are obviously terrified to come forward, even victims, and also people that may know a great deal about what members of their community are doing.
Certainly, and it's something that causes us great concern, that there are people who have information maybe about somebody who lives with them or lives next door or something they've seen, and then there are other people who may actually have been a witness to something and may have been involved in a particular incident or event. And a lot of them are reluctant to come forward or to give us the information that they have. We'd like to encourage those people to have faith and have confidence in the authorities. If they come forward, firstly, we'll look after them. Secondly, I feel they have a moral obligation, not only to their own community, but to the Australian community, to come forward with that information.
Is it drugs behind a lot of this?
We suspect that drugs would be a part of it. If it's a conflict between two criminal groups, more often than not, it's about a turf war, if you like, and more often than not, turf wars are about drugs. What would normally happen is with two criminal groups, if they have an area, whether it's geographic or client-based, where they supply drugs, and somebody else begins to move in that area and take over that clientele, obviously it hurts their hip pocket, and then conflict arises about who owns that particular turf, whether it's geographic or it's just simply in terms of a particular client group.
Now, of course, the other issue is the weapons involved. You've seized an astonishing number of guns in the last year.
Yes, we have. In the last financial year, we seized over 6,000 firearms. In this financial year, and we're just over halfway, we've seized around 3,500 firearms. That tells me that we're doing something right. We're obviously getting all of those weapons off the street. However, it obviously means that we also have a long way to go. There's a lot more out there that we need to do.
And do you know where those guns are coming from?
Our intelligence is that most of those weapons seized are actually stolen from legitimate sources. So they may be legitimately owned by someone and stored at home, or stored in a weapons store of some sort, or some company that has legitimate uses for them, and then they're diverted into criminal activity.
Now, you've had 3 strike forces working in this area over the last 12 months. What actual progress have you made, do you think?
Well, we've made quite a number of arrests, and without sort of being too specific, the 2 main squads that are involved are the gang squad and the Middle East organised crime squad. Between the 2 of them, they've arrested somewhere over 900 individuals in the last 12 months, and they've laid over 2,000 charges in the last 12 months.
And in a sense, is this combination of the motorcycle gangs and the Middle Eastern groups, is that more difficult to control?
Yeah, I would say it's the toxic combination. It's very undesirable to see 2 criminal milieus with both with equally bad aspirations coming together and combining their evil intent, if you like.
Do you think that you are going to be able to control it, or are Sydney-siders going to have to accept that this will become part of life?
No, and they should not accept that this is part of life. We have a responsibility, a sacred duty, if you like, to make sure that the public, the New South Wales community, that shouldn't have to put up with this.
Commissioner, thanks for speaking to us.
Thank you for your time today.